We'll continue with Chris Benoit. Today is the anniversary of it. Of the case.
It's a double murder-suicide. I'm now going to argue it could be triple murder. Let's go through the events as they happened. On Friday, the 22nd of June, Benoit went to visit his doctor. Why he went, we don't know. But what we do know is there's a picture of him in the office just 2 hours before the murders took place. This is the last picture taken of him by a fan. According to the fan, he was very, very relaxed. He was very happy. He was very polite. He was very kind. Is this the kind of man who's about to commit a double murder and kill himself? Now I'm going to argue and think about this. While he's in the doctor's office, while he's on his way home, intruders break into his home. They tie up his wife and put the child in the bedroom, possibly locked. These intruders, possibly meditated extortionists, may have been surveying the property, waiting for a moment when Benoit would be out of the house. They may even be known to Benoit. People said he's been worried the last couple of weeks. Some people said he wasn't, but some people said he looked worried. Was he worried about somebody who was threatening him? Benoit was a very, very, very private man. He may not have told anybody about this, but he may have been worried about extortionists threatening him. It may have even been people with a wrestling background and experience, maybe even somebody he knew. When Benoit returns home on that Friday the 22nd of June, maybe he was sedated upon entry, possibly with chloroform. After all, he's a big wrestler. But if there's 2, 3, or 4 big guys in there, and he comes in, and they've already tied down the wife, and they've already locked the son, or even tied the son to the bed, imagine, he's been sedated, and he's too weak and groggy to reply. Maybe he's sedated with chloroform so that he actually collapses and then is revived. And when he's revived, maybe he's tied up. Maybe his whole family are under siege and are being held hostage. It doesn't follow that the police get there. When the police get there, we have to find a whole house in disarray. Maybe these hostages are people who want to put the blame on Benoit, but maybe they want to get away with extortion. If it means that they have to kill all 3 people, so be it. But the objective is to extort possibly money out of them and to put the blame on Benoit so that the police don't chase them. In which case, everything they leave in that house should fit in with that. Benoit might have been told under duress that the extortionists intended to kill his family one by one. If he doesn't comply, they start with his wife, they go to his children, and they threaten to kill him. Benoit himself, when he came to, may have been tied up. He was unable to move, unable to do anything about it. I don't care whether you're a wrestler, I don't care whether you're a world champion, but if you're tied up, you're fairly groggy, and you're weakened, and you're tired, you're not going to be able to kill this wife. We know that she was the first to be killed.
Hello, Benji.
Maybe they used wrestling holds to make it look like Benoit did it, thus not only escaping justice, but threatening to ruin Benoit's reputation, adding more pressure on him. Now, I've put this to some top wrestling writers, and they've come up with a point. They said, well, maybe, but wouldn't Benoit then have capitulated, given in? He's seen his wife, and he thinks his child's going to die. But would he? Benoit was a very, very adamant person. He refused. Maybe he didn't even see his wife dying. Maybe they came out of the office where she died. Maybe Benoit was held himself hostage in his workroom with his equipment. Maybe he was in the gym, in the downstairs, in the basement. And maybe they came in and maybe they said to him, "We've killed your wife," but he didn't believe them. Maybe they said, "We're going to kill your son," but he didn't believe them, which they weren't ready for, and then having told them to call back. Maybe they were ready, the phone call came in, they had an answer, and they knew what they wanted Benoit to say. 30 p.m., according to the WWE website, a co-worker who often travels with Benoit called him from outside the Houston airport, and Benoit answered. And Benoit told the co-worker that Nancy was throwing up blood and that Daniel was also throwing up blood.
96. There was a promo that Arn Anderson cut. He talked about Chris Benoit's obsession with Kevin Sullivan.
The fact of the matter is, Chris, there's going to come a time, and it's not that far down the road. You see, I've got more age in years. I've got more age in the business, in this great sport. And age denotes wisdom. There's going to come a time in my life and in your life when there's no more cameras, no more TV lights, no more people running up to you at the mall saying, "Can I have an autograph?" And whether you walk away from this great sport, or whether you limp away, or whether they roll you away in a wheelchair, the one constant will always be in your life is your family. They're there. They pat you up when you're hurt. They prop you up. They build your ego up, and they send you back out that door. Well, Chris, I'm just going to ask you one time. Is this obsession with destroying every aspect of Kevin Sullivan's life worth losing your soul? Well, is it?
Wow. Now that's what I call eerie. Very, very eerie. With all the things Arn could have said in that promo, he basically brought up Chris's family, which obviously at the end, it's about Chris's family. He brought up Kevin Sullivan, which I very much think was about Kevin Sullivan too. And he brings up, if you don't get over this obsession with Kevin Sullivan, is it worth losing your soul? Well, is it? Well, why do you have to lose your soul in all of this? And I know what people are going to say. Oh, come on, that's just a promo. Arn Anderson didn't know what was going to happen. There's no way Arn Anderson would have thought Chris Benoit would really die, or would have entertained or crossed into his mind that Chris was really going to be dead like that. The only problem is, I think Chavo Guerrero tells us of another example when Arn Anderson predicted Chris Benoit's death yet again.
I remember Arn Anderson saying, "You know what, if Benoit didn't show up with no word, he's either has just taken off to like Alaska and he's going to be like a merchant marine or something, or he's dead basically." That's I remember him saying that, not meaning it.
It's like, what do you mean not meaning it? He said Chris is not here, he's dead. That's how else could he mean it? How else could he say it? You know, of all the possibilities, why does death have to be the ultimate one? Why someone wouldn't be at work? Maybe they got kidnapped. Maybe they got held hostage, taken hostage. You know, because at this point, Chavo hadn't told anybody in the company about the text messages he had been getting, which is very suspicious in of itself. Waited, 30-something hours to even say something? And that's from the last text message that he got. Because he got them at 4 or 5 in the morning on Sunday, the day of vengeance, June 24th, 2007. Didn't say anything till that next day, Monday, around 11, 12. Didn't say anything to company officials until that time. And so it's like, first of all, why are you waiting so long to say something to somebody? Why are you withholding this? Oh, was trying to cover for Chris. Cover for what? Cover for what? You said yourself, and Chavo in interviews has said Chris sounded groggy, didn't sound like himself, sounded like he forced an "I love you." So there were many signs there where Chavo even admitted that he picked up on that something didn't seem right. But he was covering for Chris. That's very odd. Arn Anderson predicting and saying Chris Benoit's dead. That's really strange. These are not normal behaviors. You know, it just seems really weird to me how all of this played out. But we're not done with Arn Anderson just yet. I want to go to an interview Black Bart gave where he talked about some behind the scenes stuff with Chris Benoit and Arn Anderson.
They're bringing him into WCW as the a horseman, one of the horsemen. Bart, go put him over. Yes, sir. I'll go put him over. Me and Chris have a background in Japan that unless you was on them tours, you didn't. You don't see them matches over here. Me and Benoit went out there, brother, and Benoit said, I said, brother, they want you to. He said, no, just have a regular match, just like.
Take us behind the scenes prior to the exodus of Benoit and Guerrero and all those guys when they go. What are the politics at play? Really?
You want to know why they left?
Well, we can get your version of why they left.
I'll tell you exactly why they left.
You tell me.
It's not my version. It is why.
Go ahead.
Kevin was hired as a booker.
Yeah.
His wife, Miss Nancy, had been having an affair with Benoit the whole time they were on the road together. That's an ultimate sin in the wrestling business. And it's an ultimate sin in life for your wife to date your buddy or somebody you're working with, but it happens all the time, okay? So Benoit took Kevin's condo on Daytona Beach. He took Kevin's wife. He did a lot of stuff. Kevin's badass. Kevin would have kicked Benoit's ass easily, or he'd have stabbed him in the eye with a fork, or he did something. Nancy couldn't let it go. Every day she was telling Chris, he's going to get you. Watch him. He's going to get you. So years go by. And Kevin told me, he said he took my wife, he took my condo in Daytona. When he got the job back booking, he said, I'm not going to do anything to him because I don't want to lose my job. Kevin put the world title on that dipshit. Had him beat, god dang, Sid Vicious. And I begged him, I said, don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. It's foolish. Benoit is not a world champion. Don't do this. He's great on the card, like I said. In the Ringling Brothers circus, he's a high wire rat. But he's not the lion tamer. He sticks his head in the lion's mouth, is going to get bit off. And that's what happened. Kevin got the booking job. We were in, I want to say, Cincinnati or something. Benoit beats Sid Vicious for the world's title. We go to Cleveland or something the next day. J.J. Dillon comes walking in. No, not J.J., but they had given the accountant, nice guy, not Bob Duke. Bill Bush. Bill Bush. They made Bill Bush the boss. Some TV guys and whatever got this big push to get rid of Eric Bischoff because Eric had been flailing and whatever. So they fire Eric Bischoff and put Bill Bush in as the boss. So Kevin puts the world title on Benoit. Bill Bush comes in the dressing room with Kevin and I, and he said, guys, I know what I'm going to do, but I just want to tell you. He said, Benoit, Guerrero, Perry Saturn, the blonde-haired guy that was a skateboard guy for a while that looked kind of good but never drew a dime. I don't know. Shane Douglas, and somebody else said, they're all going to leave if I don't fire Kevin and you and J.J. Dillon. I said, what? Said, quote unquote, Benoit said he can't trust his career in Kevin's hands. I said, Kevin, against everybody, put the world's title on him last night. And he said, well, I'm going to let him go, but I just want you to know the ultimatum that they just gave me. I said, really? So I walked out of the dressing room. I found Benoit. I took and sat his ass down in the middle of the arena where nobody was around. I said, let me tell you something worthless. I won't use the language I did. But I said, Kevin Sullivan is your biggest pusher. I said not to put the world title on you. J.J. Dillon said not to put the world title on you. But Kevin is your biggest pusher. He did that on his own. I said, now here's the difference between Kevin and I. If you'd have taken my wife, I would kick your ass every time I saw you for the rest of your life. That's what I'd do. But I said, now that you tried to take my job because I'm Kevin's friend and you want to fire me? I said, I'll cut your fucking head off and put it on a stick in front of your house for all the kids to throw rocks at it. I said, I'm not the guy to mess with. He got up and I said, come on, let's roll. Tough guy, let's go. And I was 50 at something at the time, I don't know. He ran off through the building, oh my God. About an hour later, here comes JJ. He walks in. He said, Mike, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything. He said, the lady at Human Resources just called me and said that Benoit called her and that Mike Graham in the upper office had threatened his life. And I said, JJ, you've known me a long time. Would I do that? He said, oh yeah. I said, no, wrong answer. I said, let me call the lady. She said, don't. I said, let me call her. So I call her. Hi, how are you? Mike Graham, yes ma'am. I just had she like we don't know. Well, I just had a complaint from a wrestler that said you threatened his life. I said, here's the way it is. This is a very violent sport we live in. We're not selling candy bars and crap like that out here. I said, I've grown up. I said, all I told Chris was that if he had taken my wife and totally embarrassed me in front of my friends, my comrades, my everything, that I'd whip his ass every time I saw him. Now, can you blame a high-strung professional athlete for just making a comment like that to another high-strung? I said, that's the way, we don't go dancing. We don't go, we're kind of like dogs that nip at each other. And she said, that's what you said to him? I said, yeah, I told him I'd whip his ass every time I saw him had he done that to me. Where Kevin didn't do nothing, And he said, oh, well, yeah, I can understand that. So then when he didn't get her to do anything to me, and when Bill Bush wasn't going to fire Kevin, then that's when I called him the little band of midgets. Little band of midgets ran to New York, and I said, I just saved our company $2.5 million a year because they never drew a dime. Not a dime. Not a dime. I did the TVs. I had the TV people give me a minute-to-minute rating of all of our shows. I knew when people stopped watching, who they were watching, when they were tuning in. Those guys never drew a dime. Not one penny. People were changing the station, watching something else when they came on. How they convinced into doing what they did, I don't know. I said, Barry Windham, put him on TV. But Barry's Barry, and I love you when you see this, but he's so undependable. Barry does what he wants to do. He wants to go drinking and chasing some girl. He ain't gonna come to work. Maybe a week, 2 weeks. I mean, but when he was on TV, they watched him. When Rick Rude was on TV, they watched him. When Sting was on TV, they watched him. Luger, somewhat. Stevie Booker T, nobody watched him. So, I mean, I knew. I wrote lists of names to put on TV.
So you spotted your first gray? Don't panic. Come in Just for Men early gray coverage. The grays are history. And you're on top of the world.
There's a story told many times that you threatened to slash Chris Benoit's throat, and he used that as an excuse to get out of his contract. Have you ever heard that before?
Oh, I've heard it.
What are your thoughts? This is not a PG show we're doing, so don't worry about it.
Well, it's public knowledge that Benoit started having an affair with Nancy, Kevin's wife. Kevin would be in the ring wrestling, and Benoit would have her out, being romancing her and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely insulted Kevin in the worst way you could insult someone by doing something like that in the workplace. Everybody else knew, and pride and everything. Benoit did about as bad a situation and Nancy as you could do. Okay. With that being said, Kevin, when he found out about it, never went and beat Benoit. Never did nothing. He left him alone. And I asked Kevin, because Kevin's violent. He's violent. I said, Kevin, how'd you get over? God, I got nuts. I don't know if I could have handled it or not. And he said, Mike, I lost my wife. I lost my brand new home on Daytona Beach. I lost almost all my money. I didn't want to lose my job. If I said boo to Chris Benoit, I'd lose my job. And I didn't. That's all I had left. If I would have done that, she would have beat me. I'd have lost everything. I went, that makes sense. I get it. Chris Benoit, he never did nothing. Nancy is a shit disturbing bitch. She had a real dark, evil side that unless you knew the family, you didn't know existed. So she was stirring Chris up all the time. Kevin's going to get you. You know, he's not the kind of guy to let you do this. So every time you'd go home, Nancy was yanking and yanking and yapping, keeping Chris wired up. When Kevin Sullivan got the booking job, I called him the band of midgets. Benoit, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn,
Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie Guerrero. They all went to our boss. Oh, Dak was another TV. Bill, nice guy. He was an accountant. How they thought he could run wrestling? He was the accountant for WCW. How are you going to run wrestling as an accountant? But he was a nice guy. He tried. He was polite. He was nice. They go to him and say, we can't trust our careers in the hands of Kevin Sullivan. And because Mike Graham is his friend and a road agent, we want Kevin fired and we want Mike fired. Just because. So the guy, Bill Bush was his name. So Billy says, well, he said, either fire him or we're going to New York. So Bill said, well, we're talking to you, trying to talk you out of this. Do you do any good? No. They got to be fired or we're leaving. Bill said, I guess you're going to be leaving then because I won't be threatened and I'm not going to fire someone for no reason. He said, I can't fire them. What have they done? They haven't done anything. Can't just fire somebody for the heck of firing them. So Bill comes and tells me and Kevin. We're in Cincinnati. We're in Cincinnati, Ohio. And and so he comes and tells us that they want us fired just because they can't trust Kevin because of his relationship with Nancy, and he never got back at Benoit, and that because he was the booker, he was going to ruin his career, do all stupid. And Kevin had nothing but respect for Benoit in the ring. You know, he didn't agree with what he had done personally, but as far as in the ring, he was good, and there was no problem. So I was livid. So I walked out of the dressing room and I found Benoit in the dressing room. I said, you come with me. We gotta have a talk. I walked him out in the middle of the arena where nobody else was around. I just had a talk with Bill Bush. I said, Kevin has done nothing ever but compliment your work and say what a great guy you are in the ring and want to give you a push and thinks, you know, that you could make money and all that kind of stuff. I said, me, I don't think you'll draw a dime, but Kevin does. Me, if you'd have taken my wife and my money and humiliated me in the workplace in front of all my friends, and if you'd have done me what you did to Kevin Sullivan, I said, I'd beat your ass every time I saw you. Every day. Every time I saw you, you'd get an ass whipping if you'd have done that to me. Because I said, it was wrong. You shouldn't have done it. It was wrong. And I said, but now you're trying to take my job because I'm Kevin's friend? You didn't bang my old lady. You didn't embarrass me. You didn't do anything to me. But I'm Kevin's friend. You want me to get fired? That takes food and money from my family now. And you're doing it just because you're spiteful. I said, if you mess with me, I'll cut your head off. I'll put it on a stick in your front yard so all the neighborhood kids can come throw rocks at it. I said, I'm not Kevin Sullivan. I don't care about losing my job. I don't care about anything else. If you mess with my livelihood, I will come get you. Now you take that back and figure it out. And he looked at me. JJ and I was talking about that this morning. He runs back to the back. An hour later, JJ comes and gets me. He says, "Oh, Mike, did you, I can't believe," and he was kind of laughing. He said, "I know you did it. I'm not even going to ask you if you did it. I know you did." I said, "You know I did what, JJ?" I just got a call from Human Resources. Benoit called them and said that he had to leave here immediately because you threatened his life. I just looked at JJ and kind of smiled. I said, "You know, that's a bunch of crap, James." I said, "Did I say I would beat him up if he had taken my wife and humiliated me like he did Kevin?" "Yeah." I said, "He's trying to take my job, so of course he's going to talk trash about me. But did I say I was going to kill him? No, I never said that." So he said, "Well, you got to call the lady at the Human Resources." So I had to get on the phone, I had to call her, I had to explain everything to her. In the meantime, they all left, and I looked at it as though we saved the company. Their salaries combined was almost $3 million, and they never drew a dime. I got the minute-to-minute reports from all the TVs. People were changing the station when they were coming on. Never drew a dime. So I kind of laughed when they left. I didn't care.
Mike Graham, Mike, we're going to continue on Chris Benoit. Horrible tragedy happened to his son. The whole style.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. It was a horrible tragedy.
Right.
Period.
Did you, knowing him and seeing how he was, did you see this kind of in his head, or it's coming, or?
No, I hadn't been around Chris since he went to New York, but I watched Nancy grow up, or his wife. She sat on the front row of Orlando for years and years when she was a little girl with her mother. Then she got married, then it was her and her husband and the mother. And, when Kevin first started going out with her, and I knew her from day one, and she had, like a lot of people do, I'm not picking on anybody, but she had a pretty dark, evil side to her. And she stabbed Kevin in the chest, tried to stab him in the chest with a butcher knife when they were married. Cops came and arrested her. Kevin went and got her out of jail, and cops went, "What are you doing?" He said, "She's my wife. I can't have her arrested in jail." I said, "Well, you could have been in the morgue right now, because if you wouldn't have got your arm up, it would have been more than the tip of the chest. You'd have been stabbed." So in any relationship, any husband and wife, any guy and girlfriend, anything, emotions and life and stress and just things can get crazy. Well, she, like some women I've known, knew how to really piss a man off. And she liked pushing those buttons, She liked pushing the buttons. She liked making someone angry. So all anybody can do is guess, Nobody, the people that know what happened are all dead. But I don't see Chris is a murderer, an intentional, like a premeditated thing, other than, and I think it sucks because he did what he did to his little boy. He never hurt anybody. He never did anything. He
did not hurt his boy.
Deserve what he got. And in being married, and relationships and that kind of thing, I think probably Chris got in an argument and maybe pushed Nancy or did something and she hit her head, or I think if I have to guess at it, and that's all we can do is guess, you ask my opinion, I think she accidentally, I don't think he meant to kill her. But once she was dead, now insets the heartbeat, oh my God, I'm gonna go to prison. I've killed my wife. What am I going to do? What am I this? What am I going to? Because it took him a day to think about this, so it wasn't an instantaneous thing going off in his head. And I don't know, but I've heard that the little boy text messaged one of his friends saying that his mommy was in the room next door, dead.
Really?
Oh. So I think in Chris's confusion, I couldn't even imagine what was going through his mind at that point, But I think he thought, who's going to take care of my boy? Who's he going to go to foster home or what? I just don't know. But to think and do the thing with the little boy the next day, and then himself. He thought about it and planned that part of it, but I think it all started as an accident. I think then it got way blown out of hand. I don't really think Chris was an intentionally evil person. You know, I called him out. He wouldn't fight. You know, that somebody that's gonna intentionally kill somebody, I think if you pushed him hard enough and said enough to him that they'd come out and fight. Well, he wouldn't fight. So it's a horrible incident, and it's too bad the little boy had to be there, and he never had a chance. He never hurt anybody. He didn't do anything. You know.
Maybe you shouldn't have hurt him. That's one of the people. Just a second.
Injuries indicated that Benoit had pressed a knee into her back while pulling on a cord around her neck, causing strangulation. Officials said that there were no signs of immediate struggle. Toxicologists found alcohol in her body but were unable to determine whether it had been present before her death or was a decomposition product. Decomposition also made it difficult to estimate pre-death levels of hydrocodone and alprazolam found in therapeutic levels in her body. In any case, her medical examiner saw no evidence that she was sedated as her son had been when he was killed. Daniel Benoit. Daniel Christopher Benoit was Chris's third child, second son, after having older paternal half-siblings named David and Megan, via Chris's first wife, who were all living in Canada at the time the murder-suicide took place. He was Nancy's only child, as she had no children with her ex-husbands. Daniel was suffocated and killed in his bedroom, and a copy of the Bible was left by his body. Daniel had internal injuries to the throat area, showing no bruises. Daniel's exact time of death is unknown. The reports determined Daniel was sedated with Xanax and likely unconscious when he was killed. Daniel's body had also just started to show signs of decomposition, but was not as far along as his mother's body. It was later alleged that Daniel had Fragile X syndrome, and that this was the cause of domestic problems in the Benoit family. Fragile X syndrome is a genetic disorder. During this time, Benoit also called and left a voicemail for an unknown friend. Wait, how is that friend still unknown? I guess they didn't want to come forward, but the details of that voicemail could have still been revealed even without revealing that person. Curious. On Sunday, June 24th, 2007, 5 text messages were sent to coworkers between 3:51 a.m. and 3:58 a.m. using both Chris and Nancy Benoit's cell phones. 4 of them were the Benoit's address. The 5th said that the family's dogs were in the enclosed pool area, and also noted that a garage side door had been left open. Guerrero and referee Scott Armstrong were 2 of the recipients of these texts. Chavo Guerrero was woken up by the texts and went back to sleep, telling himself that he would be picking up Benoit at the Houston airport in a few hours. Benoit failed to show at Houston airport on the flight that arrived at 8 a.m. Late Sunday morning, Benoit called WWE's talent relations office, stating that his son was vomiting and that he and Nancy were at the hospital with him. He also stated that he would be taking a later flight into Houston, where he was scheduled to face CM Punk for the vacant ECW World Championship at Vengeance Night of Champions. Benoit failed to appear for the Vengeance Night of Champions pay-per-view event in Houston on the night of Sunday, June 24th. Chris Benoit, according to the DA Ballard and the city sheriff, committed suicide by hanging. Benoit used a weight machine cord to hang himself by creating a noose from the end of the cord on a pull-down machine from which the bar had been removed. Benoit released the weights, causing his strangulation. Ballard said Benoit was found hanging from the pulley cable. You know what else is curious? I would like to know how many people have committed suicide in this fashion. On the 2016 Talk is Jericho podcast, Nancy's sister, Sandra Taffoloni, clarified some details further. She said that over the weekend, the search history on Benoit's computer showed that he had researched, quote, the quickest and easiest way to break a neck, end quote. He had then later used a towel around his neck attached to the handle of the machine, which he pulled down using a very heavy weight and let go, breaking his neck instantly. I mean, he's got a really thick, muscular neck, too, so, I mean, that must have taken a lot of weight. See, now when you Google the quickest and easiest way to break a neck, the only thing that comes up is everything Chris Benoit, that he searched it. So yeah, I don't know if there are stats on people who've committed suicide using a pull-down weight machine. Discovery of the bodies. Monday, June 25th, 2007, WWE wrestler and senior officials arrived in Corpus Christi for WWE Raw, which was set to take place on the Monday night at the American Bank Center. As the early hours of the afternoon progressed and the show got closer to starting, WWE senior officials were increasingly concerned that they had not heard from Chris Benoit in over 24 hours. Chavo Guerrero then showed WWE Vice President of Talent Relations John Laurinaitis, aka Johnny Ace, the text that he and Scott Armstrong had received from Chris and Nancy's cell phones in the early hours of Sunday. As more time progressed without any contact from Benoit, WWE called the Fayetteville, Georgia police for a welfare check at the Benoit household. After discovering the bodies, the police notified WWE around 4:15 p.m., informing them that they had discovered 3 bodies at the Benoit home, and the house was now ruled as a major crime scene. A suicide note was not discovered during the initial investigation, but one was later discovered in a Bible that had been among Benoit's possessions that were sent to his first wife and their 2 children in Canada. Benoit's father, Michael Benoit, stated that Chris had left a handwritten notation in there saying, "I'm preparing to leave this earth." Memorial and cremation. Memorial for Nancy and Daniel took place in Daytona Beach, Florida, July 14, 2007. Both were cremated and their ashes placed in starfish-shaped urns for Nancy's family. Chris was also cremated. Following a private memorial service in Ardrossan, Alberta on August 6, 2007, but the fate of his ashes have not been publicly revealed. Okay. Possible motives. WWE attorney Jerry McDevitt appeared on Live with Dan Abrams July 17, 2007, and said Benoit was prescribed testosterone as part of a treatment for testosterone replacement therapy, which McDevitt said was a common practice for people who had used steroids in the past and had suffered testicular damage as a result. Former wrestler Christopher Nowinski stated that Benoit may have been suffering from repeated untreated concussions throughout his wrestling career, ultimately leading to an unstable mental state. Nowinski was quoted as saying that Benoit was one of the only guys who could take a chair shot to the back of the head, which is stupid. Tests conducted on Benoit's brain by Julian Bales, the head of neurosurgery at West Virginia University, showed Benoit's brain was so severely damaged it resembled the brain of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. Other tests conducted on Benoit's brain tissue revealed severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, and damage to all 4 lobes of the brain and brainstem. I mean, wow, that sounds pretty extensive. I mean, that sounds extremely extensive, not minor in any way. Bales and his colleagues concluded that repeated concussions can lead to dementia, which can contribute to severe behavioral problems. Benoit's father said that the brain damage may have been the leading cause of the double murder-suicide. A statement released by WWE described this as speculative. I mean, if his brain, it looks like the brain of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient, I mean, how speculative is that? Nancy Benoit filed for divorce in May 2003, allegedly after domestic abuse from Chris, but had it withdrawn in August 2003. In February 2008, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported that Nancy may have suspected her husband of having an affair with a female WWE wrestler, and that they may have also argued over a life insurance policy. The AJC claimed that the source was a recently released report from the Fayette County Sheriff's Office. So the initial response from the WWE was, what was this? This was Vince McMahon opening Raw 3-hour tribute to one of the greatest WWE superstars of all time. Tonight will be a tribute to Chris Benoit. So apparently this was in response to Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel being dead. And that was all the information that was available at that time. Now, coincidentally, I mean, the coincidences are stacking here. After Vince McMahon had gathered the wrestlers together to tell them that Chris, Nancy, and Daniel had all died, WWE canceled the scheduled 3-hour-long live show that had been scheduled for a few hours later on the night of the 25th, June 25th, which coincidentally was supposed to be a memorial for the Mr. McMahon character who on the June 11th episode of Raw died, in quotations, in a limo explosion. So in the last hour of the 3-hour tribute program, tonight. On the contrary, tonight's show will be dedicated to everyone who's been affected by this terrible incident. This evening marks the first step of the healing process. Tonight, WWE performers will do what they do better than anyone else in the world, entertain you. On a Friday, June 29, 2000, down edition of that week, Vince McMahon released another statement indicating that the related events of the tragedy were not known at the time. The rest of the statement remained the same as the first one. On a recent edition,
Bear with.
Bring barista.
WWE performers will do what they do better than anyone else in the world, entertain you. On a Friday, June 29, 2007, before the SmackDown edition of that week, Vince McMahon released another statement indicating that the related events of the tragedy were not known at the time. The rest of the statement remained the same as the first one. On a recent edition of Raw, the WWE presented a special show recognizing the career of Chris Benoit. However, the facts of this horrific tragedy involving Chris Benoit were not known at the time. Therefore, other than my comments, there will be no mention of Mr. Benoit's name in this program. On the contrary, this show is dedicated to everyone who has been affected by this terrible incident. This marks the first step of the healing process whereby WWE press conference that it could not perform tests for steroids or growth hormones on Daniel because of a lack of urine. Xanax and hydrocodone were also found in Chris Benoit's system at levels investigators therapeutic use. Elevated levels of the synthetic anabolic steroid cypionate were found in his urine. Investigators believe that the level suggested it had been taken recently. While the synthetic anabolic steroid testosterone cypionate was found in his urine, there was no evidence of GHB, contrary to speculation. Benoit also tested negative for blood alcohol. Drug charges against Benoit's doctor. Phil C. Austin was the personal doctor for Chris Benoit. Killer or Killers in. Now again, let's just take a pause and a step back. This is not, Chris Benoit is not a random nobody. This is a very famous celebrity, so to speak, in the world of sports entertainment. If somebody did want to either rob his house or cause some kind of ransom, hostage, kidnapping situation of some kind, and they're holding a gun to his to what is he going to do? He's going to do whatever they say to do. Again, I'm not saying anyway, I am not saying there's any definitive evidence this is what happened. If it happened, would it explain the result? 2, after Chavo reached Chris on his cell phone, he said that Chris sounded very odd, groggy, tired. He also said that Chris told him, "I love you, Chavo," which sounded forced. The WWE also said that when Chris called in and told them that Nancy and Daniel were sick, he did not sound like himself. He sounded groggy. Chris then said, "I love you," which they say was out of context because he usually didn't say this. 3, Chris Benoit's cell phone is cannot find his cell phone or the needles they say Chris used to inject himself with steroids shortly before he died. The police have turned his cell phone off. Wait, what? The police turned his phone off? They don't have his phone? Again, I'm not claiming any of these points here are true or untrue. 4, Chris was not hanging from the weight machine. He was lying on the floor underneath the machine. Another officer said that Benoit was slumped against the weight machine. 5, there was a white cloth wrapped around Chris's neck. If he was so suicidal, why would he care if his neck was bruised? 6, the medical examiner says that Benoit...
Some people do that just because it provides comfort, not too harsh on the neck.
Benoit died on Saturday. The text messages
But Chris did not do that.
were sent Sunday. Chris was already dead, so who sent the text messages? It is that nobody talked to Chris on Sunday. 7. The steroids found in Chris's house were not in his body. I'm not sure what he's getting at there. If Chris had murdered his family, why did he need to text people? Think about it. Everybody was dead. Nobody would hear him talking, so why text? Calling would have been easier. I believe the killer texted Benoit's address to get somebody to come to the house to find the bodies. But why would they do that here? I don't know. 9. Chris sent Chavo a text message telling him his address. Why did he do this? Chavo already knew where Chris lived. He spent the previous weekend with him. I mean, these are all good points. Although, conversely, if Benoit is in this advanced stage of dementia at this point, perhaps another head injury at the house. Maybe he just slipped, bumped his head, and that made everything a lot worse. And at that point, he was no longer thinking clearly. Or is it possible to his house and he had a head injury at that time, and he killed Nancy or his son?
What does say superdry taste like? Let me show you. Refresh.
Back to consumerism. Back to murder in just a second.
Maybe the burglars did it. Who knows? And then maybe he killed himself, or maybe it was staged to look like a suicide. Because again, suicidal people are not magically exempt from the world of crime. A lot of coincidence theorists maintain that, okay, he had this letter saying he's prepared to leave this earth. Okay, so let's say Benoit is planning suicide for however many weeks or months. Does that magically make him immune from any violent encounters with criminals? Do criminals know which people are suicidal and not suicidal and specifically don't target them? Is there a magic Dungeons and Dragons protection spell against suicide?
Sometimes people like to take advantage of people they can, even mental health workers, but this is a different thing.
Suicidal people in the universe. This is something coincidence theorists just really have a hard time with. I mean, this is basic logic, people. 10. Chris's body was badly decomposed, about the same as Nancy's. This shows he died sooner than Sunday. Again, I don't know where he's getting this information from. 11. Why would he tie up Nancy to kill her? He was a big guy. He could have just hit her one good time and she would have been out. I mean, that's an interesting point as well. But again, if it was the dementia, and who knows how he would have done it. If he wanted to, if he actually did do it. 12. Ray also told me that the world press is reporting the manner of the deaths wrong. He says that Daniel was shot in his head and Nancy was shot in her chest. Okay, now we're getting into a cover-up, if that is true. 13, Chavo said that Chris Benoit seemed worried about something, but he could not get Chris to open up and tell him to worry. Again, that's a neither here nor there situation, because if he is planning to kill his family and himself, he probably would be kind of off and worried. And then again, if somebody was holding his family hostage or whatever the situation was, of course he'd be worried in that situation as well. So simply being worried, I mean, that's not enough to know what happened about anything. 14, there was no Bible beside Chris's body. Why would he place a Bible beside Nancy and Daniel and not place one beside his own if he knew he was about to take his own life? Well, the clear answer there is suicide is a sin, whereas getting murdered is beyond your control. So I don't know, perhaps that's an easy explanation there. 15, there were 10 empty beer cans and an empty bottle of wine beside Chris's body. He tested negative for alcohol. Again, I don't know how much can be made of that. Did they DNA test the cans? Because if they already believed he did it, did they actually not DNA and fingerprint test the entire house? Because if this was a burglar or something, I mean, obviously they could have been wearing gloves and possibly not left DNA, but did they at least go through the motions of a legitimate investigation? I don't know if there are details on that. Because if it is Benoit's DNA on the beer cans, then he simply could have drank them days earlier and not bothered to clean them up. But if it's somebody else's DNA on those bottles and beer cans, I mean, that's curious. That would definitely be curious. Although, I mean, yeah, it's hard. 16, the toxicology confirmed that Chris had hydrocodone, a painkiller, Xanax, an anti-anxiety drug. I have used both of these. These two drugs combined will sedate Chris and make him very sleepy, so he could not fight back. 17, the police originally said that Daniel died on Friday because his body was badly decomposing. This supports my belief that all three died on Friday night. The police changed the manner of Daniel's death 3 times. First, he died from a garbage bag. Second, he died from a chokehold. Third, he was smothered by a pillow. Why would they keep changing? Well, I mean, incompetent police could also address that, or simply competent but differing opinions on autopsies. I don't know. 18, the police kept changing the location of where Nancy's body was found. First, she was found in a downstairs family room. Second, she was found in the upstairs bedroom. Third, she was found in the house office. That's curious. I mean, could these have not been the police, but possibly just erroneous statements passed on through the media? Broken telephone, so to speak? I mean, again, it is curious. I mean, if there were 3 changes, that's kind of a lot. 19, Chris's father said that Chris called him on Father's Day and told him that he wished he could spend more time with his family, but he had to work. One of Nancy's friends said that Nancy loved Chris and she had no plans to leave him. Again, none of this really proves anything about anything. 20, retired wrestler Bam Bam Bigelow died January 19th, 2007. Sherry Martel died June 15th, 2007. The Benoit family died June 22nd, 2007. Since the family died, 2 other wrestlers have died, Brian Adams and Johnny Crush, in July and August 2007. Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Brian Pillman all died the night before they were set to win title belts. Okay, interesting. And Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero were best friends as well. Sherry Martel's death is even more suspicious to me. Sherry Martel had ties to Nancy Benoit's ex-husband, Kevin Sullivan. The circumstances surrounding her death have never been released. I mean, this is shaping up to be quite a web. Quite a web indeed. 21. Kevin Sullivan told Chris Benoit that he would kill him. Kevin is currently a high-ranking member of a satanic cult. He is also on the WWE board of directors. Sullivan also had motive to kill Daniel Benoit because he was Chris and Nancy's offspring. Retired wrestler Dusty Rhodes said that he danced with the devil when working with Sullivan, who is known as being cold-hearted and conniving. The Benoit family was murdered on the 10-year anniversary of Nancy's divorce. Sullivan. Okay, all right. The coincidence stack is getting kind of high now. Kind of high. If that's true, I mean that would be an interesting. That's 1/365th chance that. I mean, and 10 is a round. I mean, that's a pretty round number as well. I mean, the stack, and we're gonna get back to Sullivan in a moment here, but continue on with these points. 22. Nancy's Benoit's death was posted on the internet 14 hours before her body was found. 23 weeks before he died, Benoit's colleagues said that Chris began taking alternate routes to and from work and back to his house. Chris and Nancy believed that somebody was following them. Chris's friends dismissed his worries as paranoia. Okay, I would like more information about this. So here's the thing about all these coincidences. By itself, any one of these coincidences, okay, that's not much to look at, whatever. When you have all of these coincidences, I'm not saying there's anything to them or that Benoit is innocent in any way. I'm not claiming that. I'm not claiming he's guilty or innocent. I'm just saying when you have this many coincidences, at least merits an investigation into other avenues. That's all I'm saying. If for nothing else, then to confirm the conclusion that Benoit is guilty, just to rule out all the other possibilities. Now, did police really investigate Sullivan? Now, again, I don't have this information. I don't know whether they did or didn't, but if they are sure, it's easier just to close that case. It's a murder-suicide, bam, bam, done. There's no need to go digging and interviewing all of Benoit's colleagues about how him and Nancy think that somebody's following them, and that all of these things. There's no reason to go down those rabbit holes when you're 100% convinced he did it. Now, obviously, the police's job is to do objective, logical, neutral investigation. But how often does that really happen? And did they investigate thoroughly? Maybe they did, but I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, because in a lot of cases, they simply don't. 24.24 here, the Benoit family was murdered the same week that the WWE had a storyline of who killed Vince McMahon, the head of the whole company. So, for those that believe in like these really crazy Illuminati conspiracy theories, and by crazy I don't mean untrue. let's not fall for all these ad hominem or appeal to incredulity logical fallacies. It might be true, but it just seems, I mean, there's a lot here to unpack. But if there is a plot, see, pro wrestling itself, I'd have to do a dedicated episode on this, but the amount of predictive programming in pro wrestling, I mean, everything from the New World Order to the so-called 9/11 predictions with Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage talking about the Twin Towers coming crumbling down, the Twin Towers tag team, Akeem and the Big Boss Man. This is the Gene Okerlund interview that I'm sure most pro wrestling fans know about. I mean, it's just uncanny, the level of coincidences, if these are simply coincidences. I'm not going to get into that, but billionaire Vince McMahon, clearly, if he is dialed in to the New World Order or the Illuminati in some capacity, then the plot to eliminate Chris Benoit and his family, for whatever reason, let's not get into motives here. If you walk into a room with dead bodies, the first thing on your mind is not motive. You examine the evidence. Hallucinating, you would know the motive, even if there was a good one. Clearly, and these high-level, this is something coincidence theorists are just so clueless about. I mean, the Dunning-Kruger here is off the charts. If there is a top-secret motive, how could that motive ever be revealed? Because if there was a good enough reason to perpetrate the conspiracy, why would the reason be publicly available? Wouldn't that defeat the whole purpose of the conspiracy in the first place? So if there is a conspiracy, I'm not alleging there is, but if there is one, the motive might not be so easily and publicly available. Or, conversely, motives could be presented that the coincidence theorists would just brush off as silly or with appeal to incredulity logical fallacies where they wouldn't believe the motive presented, even if it was the true motive, if the conspiracy is true. Someone else posted this, that it just happened to be a different Kevin Sullivan that's on the WWE board of directors. I mean, that by itself would be a gigantic coincidence.
All right, this was 3 days ago on the Chris Benoit. Here we go.
Do something. How much of your personal info is floating around out there on the internet? Your phone number, your home address, maybe even your family. Hard work, scrubbing your, protect yourself.
I just coordinated the brain donation of another murder-suicide last week, where when I spoke to the police about it, they already suspected CT. Like, every time I've seen this sort of midlife lose your mind thing, and we've looked. I think we're almost every time we've seen CT,
These people just want to sell something. Great friends.
They wouldn't believe the motive presented, even if it was the true motive, if the conspiracy is true. Someone else posted this, that it just happened to be a different Kevin Sullivan that's on the WWE board of directors. I mean, that by itself would be a gigantic coincidence. Okay, so apparently it looks like Kevin Sullivan, that is a different Kevin Sullivan. Okay, wow, we're going down the Sullivan rabbit holes. So there is a producer named Kevin Sullivan. Supposedly this is not the pro wrestler Kevin Sullivan that Nancy Benoit was married to. But all the coincidence theorists out there, get a load of this.
Second.
Another very
It's the anniversary.
strange case, this one out of Atlanta. He was set to compete Sunday, but wrestler Chris Benoit canceled at the last minute. Monday, the star wrestler, his wife, and young son were found dead in their home. Police call it a murder-suicide and describing the details of their deaths as bizarre. Jonathan Seri is following the story from Atlanta. Jonathan?
John, this is a bizarre case indeed. As we speak, the GBI, or Georgia Bureau of Investigation, is performing autopsies and toxicology tests on the 3 victims. Still waiting for those results, but investigators are handling this case as if it were a murder-suicide. That's what they believe. Investigation of the crime scene in suburban Atlanta. Wrestling icon Chris Benoit had canceled a pay-per-view appearance at Sunday's Vengeance event in Houston, citing personal reasons. World Wrestling Entertainment says it asked authorities to check on Benoit and his family after friends said the wrestler had sent them strange text messages. On Monday, authorities went out to the Benoit's gated home in suburban Atlanta. There they found the bodies of the wrestler, his wife Nancy, and their 7-year-old son Daniel in 3 separate rooms.
Mr. Benoit was located in a weight room, and the minor child was located upstairs in a bedroom.
Investigators say that a gun was not used during these crimes. They wouldn't specify exactly what led to the deaths of these 3 Benoit family members. However, the website TMZ.com is quoting several Atlanta-based law enforcement sources saying that Benoit may have strangled his wife on Saturday and then smothered his son.
He murdered his own 7-year-old son, leaving his son's body on the child's bed next to the Bible. We're getting new information tonight to tell you about this horrific crime, and we are learning more about the Benoit family's secrets. Let's go live to Georgia. Scott Ballard, District Attorney for the Griffin Judicial Circuit, joins us. There have been reports that the mother, the wife, was killed first, possibly on Friday, and then the son the next day. How is it that, what told you on the crime scene that it was in that particular order?
Well, the mother's body was in a greater state of decomposition. Her face was already turning black. The boy had not started to change color. But the medical examiner's conclusions are that the time of death for the mother was sometime on Friday, and for the child was probably Saturday morning.
Now, where was the mother found in relation to the child?
There is an upstairs to the house. On the right side of the upstairs, on the floor of an office, is where her body was found. The boy's room is on the opposite side of the upstairs. Interestingly, you have to go downstairs to go to the other side of the house. You can't walk from where the mother was found to where the boy was found without going downstairs.
Prior to this past weekend, were the police, if you know, ever summoned to the house for problems, or was there any sort of issue that you're aware of in the marriage or in the family?
I'm not aware of the police being summoned. The only thing I know about was in 2003, I believe she filed a temporary protective order against him and then later dismissed it.
Now, were there drugs found on the scene, prescriptions?
Yeah, prescriptions for steroids. Prescription drugs, yes.
Where were the prescription drugs found?
All I know is that they were inside the house.
Prescribed by whom?
Well, that's a matter right now that's under investigation. I don't want to compromise the investigation by releasing that information.
All right, but the label clearly identifies someone, but you're investigating that.
That's right.
All right. Was there an unusual amount of drugs in the house? Or something, or a routine sort of prescription, a single prescription?
Again, I think we better just not compromise the investigation at this point.
It's being written, or it's out in the public domain that there were needle marks on the child. Can you confirm that tonight, sir?
Right. The medical examiner found older needle marks on the arm of the boy.
1 or 2, or is there a series of them?
I think there are several.
Do you know if there was anything wrong with the child?
The child was undersized. I've heard other reports, but I really don't know them to be true. But I know that he was somewhat undersized.
Do you mean there's just a little bit, or was it something beyond? I mean, the child was profoundly small for his age.
I've heard people use the term dwarf in relation to him. I saw a photograph of him, and I didn't notice him to be that much undersized, but again, I'm not an expert and I wouldn't really know.
The wife was, the cause of death for the wife was what, sir?
Strangulation.
And she was bound, her feet and hands were bound?
That's correct, with a cord found around her neck.
Do you know the origin of the cord?
I'm not real sure what it was, but it was something in the nature of a cable TV cord or a telephone cord, something like that.
And the son was, the cause of death was something different than strangulation. At least it's being thought tonight, it's a chokehold.
Well, the medical examiner says asphyxiation. About the process of elimination, we come up with a chokehold. There may be some other way that he was killed, but there were no hand marks on his throat, and there was no indication that any cord had been used to kill him. So somewhat by the process of elimination, we assume a chokehold.
Were Bibles next to both bodies?
Yes.
Opened any particular page?
I don't know that. I've envisioned that the Bibles were closed, but I don't know that for a fact.
Scott, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
The reports of roid rage are rocking the pro wrestling world to its core. Investigative reporter for Sports Illustrated, Luis Fernando Llosa, joins us. Luis Fernando, nice to see you.
Glad to be here, Greta.
Roid rage, what is it?
Well,
skip that.
Did 7-year-old son Daniel have an inherited form?
All right, just a second.
Down there is missing.
Count the number of superstars who have tested themselves against the dead man and come up short. If you insist on making this mistake, then your grieving family will have no one to blame but you when the inevitable occurs.
I just spoke to one of the other officers there. My name is Dennis Fagan. I'm a retired detective in New York City. I run the security for World Wrestling, and one of our wrestlers that lives down there is missing. And he told me just to say we need a welfare check done.
Okay, what's the address?
130 Green Meadow Lane. The zip code is 30215.
All right, Dennis, what's your last name?
Fagan, F-A-G-A-N.
And what's his name?
Chris Benoit. It's spelled B-E-N-O-I-T.
Okay, and he's a wrestler?
Yes, what happened, he's a very religious gentleman, and yesterday he was supposed to show up at a pay-per-view and never got on the plane, never showed up. They tried to reach his wife, Nancy. She doesn't answer. They tried to call his house. It's out of character for him. So at 3 o'clock this morning, there was a message left for one of the other wrestlers, and basically it says, the dogs are in the backyard, the back door is open, goodbye, and that was it.
So I'm about to call out a huge flaw in what Dennis Fagan just said about the text messages being received at 3 a.m. that morning, which was June 25th, 2007. But before I do that, I want to give credit to two people. The first is Irvin Muchnick. He wrote the book about Chris and Nancy, and that's where I got a lot of the information that I have, where I've gotten some of the information I've used so far. I mean, because a lot of the information I've used has been from shoot interviews and basically putting like Kevin Sullivan's words against his own words and other things other people have said. So just pretty much pointing out the contradictions. But there are things that I did learn by reading Irv Muchnick's book, such as the whole thing we're about to talk about with the timeline here of the text messages. So, I mean, that man, a lot of people may not know, but that man, when all this stuff happened, after it happened, you know, a year, even 2 years after it happened, was really fighting to get these documents, to get interrogation videos. Well, the interrogation of Matthew Greenberg, aka the Wikipedia hacker. He fought and got the 911 calls released, which we're listening to right here. So I got to thank Irv Muchnick for that. And credit goes to Purple Sky 11 for the photo I'm going to show of the text message. because she filed for the Freedom of Information Act and got the Sheriff's Department of Fayetteville, Georgia, to send her police reports, crime scene photos, toxicology, autopsies, all kinds of stuff that she has shared through Google Drive. So I thank her for that. I thank her for her hard work that she has put in, all the research she did, reading through those police documents, the police reports, a 400-page. That doesn't add up. Closed pool area, garage side door is open. Now you look at the dates, June 24th, 2007, 4:53 a.m. Okay, now Chavo was in Houston, Texas, so they're an hour behind. So let's say it was 3:53 a.m. in Houston when he got it. Okay, either way you look at it, whether it was 3:53, 4:53, we're going to go by the 4:53 right here. But either way, it was June 24th, before Vengeance, Night of Champions ever took place, before that pay-per-view ever came on. We're talking hours and hours and hours before. So by the time Dennis Fagan made this call, we'll do the math. So from Sunday, June 24th, 2007, at 4:53 a.m. to Monday, June 25th, 2007, 4:53 a.m. That's 24 hours, okay? So from 4:53 a.m. to 5:53 a.m., 1 hour. 6:53, 7:53, 8:53, 9:53. We're at 5 hours. 10:53, 11:53, 12:53. That is 8 hours. 8 hours on top of the 24 hours. We're at 32 hours right now. 2 hours from the time Chavo received the message from Chris Benoit about the dogs are in the enclosed pool area and the garage side door is open. 32 hours. Now, to get technical with it, because on the police report, it says Dennis Fagan made the 911 call that we just listened to at 1:16 p.m. So we stopped at 12:53 p.m. So you add an additional 23 minutes to that. We're looking at 32 hours and 23 minutes before 911 was called, before they actually did something about this. And everybody knew Chris didn't show up at the pay-per-view. So my question is, why not immediately, like, something's wrong here, something's not right? You know, why not get in touch with the authorities then and there? Why wait until the next day? Oh, well, Chavo said that Benoit texted him all these messages. Who cares? You knew he didn't show up. There was already a red flag there. So I'm just like, why in the world did they wait so long to contact the authorities? And just the fact that they're having Dennis Fagan do it, the head of security, I feel like there's somebody else that probably should have made that phone call. But they chose Mr. Dennis Fagan here, and he's already screwed up and got the timeline wrong, which WWE would change multiple times.
Dogs in the yard?
Yes, and the back door's open. He didn't say anything else, and that was it. That message was left at 3 o'clock this morning for another wrestler.
Okay, that's 130 Green Meadow Lane.
Yes.
Okay, and what's the phone number for you?
My cell is 646-739-1992.
Okay, what does he look like?
Chris is about 6'1", very muscular, very stocky, has a very wide neck, looks like a wrestler.
Okay. White male, black male?
Yes, not male, white.
White male. Okay.
Oh, he's got short black hair.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and send somebody out there to check on him. If you want to call us back in like 45 minutes or so. If they, yeah, it's 770-461-4357. 4-4-5-7. Yeah, and if he's there, we'll tell him to give you a call. But if you want to call back and check to see if if you know he was there or anything, just call us back in about 30-45 minutes. Anybody can talk to you. It doesn't matter. Great. They're going to ask for the address again, but that's about it. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Hi, you reached Dennis Fagan. Leave your name and number, and I will get right back to you. Thank you.
When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press pound for more options.
Mr. Fagan, this is the Fayette County Sheriff's Dispatch. I do have a couple of deputies out at Mr. Benoit's residence, but the gate is locked, and there are two pretty aggressive canines, or aggressive German Shepherds out there that our deputies are unable to get in. If you happen to have a gate code or anything for him, if you could give me a call back at 770-461-4357. 770-461-4357. Thank you very much. Mr. Fagan.
Yes.
Hey, this is with Sheriff's Department Dispatch.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. Did you get my message, or did you just...
No, I just called the number back.
Okay, very good. I do have a couple of deputies out at Mr. Benoit's house.
Okay.
But the gate is locked, and they're unable to get inside.
The gate is locked.
Yeah, you wouldn't happen to have a code for that, would you?
No, I don't. And the message that we got, like I said, left a message at 3 o'clock in the morning for another wrestler.
Right.
The gate's open, the dogs are in the backyard by the pool, and the back door is open. That was it.
Right. Yeah, 'cause apparently
They're worried about him because Chris is very disappointed, and Chris is very religious.
Right.
It's unlike him. He didn't show up for a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
He never made it to the plane. They can't reach his wife. So now nobody's answering the home phone. Nobody's answering the cell phone.
Yeah, and I think as far as, I'm not sure how far away from the road the house is, so I'm not sure if they're able to tell if anybody's there. But like I said, the gate, it's got a call box. Apparently nobody's answering that. And then the dogs are actually out in the front, so, and they're yeah, and they're pretty. According to my deputy, they're pretty aggressive as well. So
okay,
they're not friendly-ish, but
okay.
So yeah, you don't happen to know anybody that would know that gate code offhand, would it?
You know what? I'm going to try and make some phone calls. Maybe maybe he did leave it for somebody, and I will get back to you.
Okay, and probably what I'll do is just have I'll have my guys go ahead and leave from where they are. And as soon as you find that information out, then just give us a call back. We'll send somebody back down there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. Mr. Fagan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, were you able to get a gate code or anything like that?
No, but what happened was they just called back. They said that there's only one neighbor to the left right there who's very friendly with them.
Okay.
They don't know if they might have the gate code, but now they're saying that there was two text messages, and they were both at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. One from his phone and one from his wife, Nancy's phone.
Okay.
And they went to the same wrestler who doesn't even live anywhere near them, and basically said, this is the house number, the dogs are in the backyard, the patio door's unlocked, and that was it. So that's what they're worried about. And it's unlike, like I said, it's out of character for Chris to do anything like this.
Right.
He's missed two shows, one on Saturday and pay-per-view on Sunday. And so they're saying the only thing they know is that one of the wrestlers called back and said he's always talking about his neighbor next door to the left, who is, I guess, good friends with him.
Right.
But I told them about the dogs, and they were saying, they don't know. The gentleman I'm dealing with at World Wrestling is a retired judge from here in New York.
Okay.
Nobody really, has a gate code, they're saying, but the thing is, I don't know what you guys would do is if you thought something was wrong in the house, you'd have to like taser the dogs to put them to sleep.
Basically, we just need somebody to contain them. I think that would be the main thing.
Right.
Now, that neighbor that's friendly with him, do you think they would be able possibly to contain those dogs?
That's what the other this Chavro is the name of the other wrestler. That's what he's saying. He's saying that Chris is always saying how friendly he is with his next door neighbor, but it's to the house to the left.
House to the left.
Yes, and
we don't know the name.
They don't seem to be very worried because they get these messages at 3:30 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
and they said when they spoke to him the other day, he seemed depressed and he said something about food poisoning. And they, like I said, they get the same messages. Nobody's answering the cell phones. Nobody's answering the house phones.
Right. That's definitely suspicious. Okay. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and have a deputy swing down and see if they can make contact with the neighbors.
Okay.
And see where we can go from there.
Okay. Thank you. You'll let me know. Thank you.
Yes. No problem. Thanks. Bye-bye.
So while these jackasses are playing phone tag, there's 3 dead bodies in that house. And again, instead of calling animal control, which is the proper thing to do, so they don't let anyone enter the crime scene, you know, because at this point, you can argue, oh, well, they don't know it's a crime scene. They know, again, he just told them, Chris missed 2 shows. This is unlike him. This is unusual behavior. Just doesn't seem like there's any urgency here. And the reason that it doesn't seem that way is because there's not. Again, they're more concerned with, well, you know, our deputies, you know, the dogs are really scary and the dogs are really mean. Oh, well, there's a neighbor, you say. It's almost as if WWE is telling the cops what to do. I mean, damn. You know what? That's exactly what's happening here. You know, Mr. Fagan telling this fucking police officer, why don't you just go next door, get that neighbor Holly McFaig, and have her take care of the dogs. Oh, you think she'll be able to contain the dogs? Yeah, that's what Chavo said. Well, by God, that's what we're gonna do.
Hey, County 911, what is your emergency?
Did you guys hear that? It dialed out, and then it rang, and the 911 dispatcher picked up. And before the 911 dispatcher picked up, you can hear it, because this is Holly McFaig, Shrep for Chris Benoit's neighbor. You could hear Holly breathing heavy. And then the 911 dispatcher picks up, pretty much, and Holly explains what all happened. But why did it record it from her end? It's like she recorded it. Why would she do that? There are so many unanswered questions in regards to this neighbor. And I'm going to play the whole 911 call. I may stop it, periodically, because I find a lot of the things that she said to be bullshit.
Hey, County 911, what is your emergency?
Hi, the cops came to my house, and I just want to make sure that they're okay, because they sent me over to my neighbor's house.
What's your address?
I'm at 110 Green Meadow Lane, and they asked me to hop the fence because they have attack dogs, and I went in, and the little boy and the mom are dead, and so I ran out to scream to them, but then they went in the house, and they haven't come out yet. Are they okay? Have you?
Okay, hold on just a moment.
I know where the controls are, but I'm not going in there until Garrett. Tell the cops to come this way.
Okay, ma'am.
Did the cops call?
Listen to me. What did the cops tell you to do?
They told me because this guy's a professional wrestler, and I'm friends with him, and they said, can you go put the attack dogs in the kennel? And I did that. And then I went upstairs. Everything was open, so I was yelling, Nancy, Daniel, that's the little boy.
Okay, first of all, you would have smelled the dead bodies. There's no question about that. One of the police officers put in their report that there was a foul odor. And when you consider, they say Nancy died around 9 to 10 p.m. Friday, Nancy would have been gone, passed away for 63 hours. I mean, if everything they say in that report, is basically the timeline of deaths, which I have questions about that too, but based on what they've said, would have been 63 hours. You damn well would have smelled death. So for her to sit there and say, well, everything was open, so I just went in calling for Nancy and Daniel. Why would you call for Nancy and Daniel when it clearly smells like dead people in that house? This don't make no sense, what this woman is saying here. It don't make no sense at all. On top of that, they asked her to jump the fence and get the dogs. Now, the dogs were being aggressive towards the cops, but very clearly, they weren't aggressive to Holly. So, if anybody has any questions, well, they had attack dogs. If there were intruders, how would they have gotten into the house? Well, there you have your answer right there. But they asked her to go put the dogs up. Now, why they didn't call animal control and do it the professional way, the right way, the way they should have, why they have Benoit's neighbor entering at that time what they should have thought to be a potential crime scene, seeing as they were calling them on the call box and nobody was answering, for them to send the neighbor over that fence to get those dogs and put them in the house, that's a huge problem. Because yes, Chris, we know it. We know this. This is obvious. They're all dead. They all died. They're all gone. And so for that neighbor to walk into the house, to the mudroom, put the dogs in those kennels, despite the obvious foul odor, and continue to proceed to walk into that house. And not only walk into the house, she had to walk up some stairs to get to Daniel's room. So she does that. She walks up those stairs. She gets to Daniel's room, goes in there and sees Daniel. Now, the police said it looked like Daniel was sleeping. So did Holly go around and look at his face? And did she touch him? Was she all, like shaking him to wake him up or whatever? Because again, we don't know what she did in that house. All we can go by is what she's saying here. And what I've gathered is she spent an awful lot of time in that house. Once she found Daniel, okay, let's say whatever, despite the fact that she shouldn't have even entered the house, and when she didn't put the...
We'll be right back.